Well, sort of early on in my research, I sort of began to see, okay, I can see sort of four sort of main subject areas. One was, call it dinosaurs and crying. Another one is GMT as a project, not a time. Then another one is time travel, and another one is sort of time and virtuosity, productivity, hacking time, things like this. The subject is so open that you could write 11. I originally came up with like 11 scenes from that sort of dramaturgical territory, but you could come up with 11 11-hour operas and you'd be barely beginning, because there's so much to talk about. But what I found was a lot of what I was reading, and I went to the Natural History Museum in London almost every single week and just looked at the dinosaur bones. I went to the Isle of Wight and looked at dinosaur foot casts, and I went to the National Physical Laboratory, which is where they measure time for the UK. They supply it for the BBC. I saw all the atomic clocks, and so gradually then, out of this massive chaos of hundreds and hundreds of pages of notes, I began to sort of whittle it down to 11 sort of key scenes. It's such a rich field that probably people who've seen it twice will still see new things that they don't remember having seen on the last one. The way I thought of it was trying to put a band together, more or less, is that it was really thinking different people have different energies. It's not just about what instruments people play, it's also about the energies that they bring. So with free improvisers and people who have a strong practice, as people who make and perform their own music, they have certain tastes, they have certain territories, certain things that they pursue. So with MC, I thought, great, him and I can just hit off each other with the text, and then I thought, okay, we need people that are not like me in MC, in terms of their persona on stage, people who are very different. So Anya and Lee, are the perfect balance. So we hold each other. It would be awful if it was just me and MC, without Anya and Lee. It's really important. It's really about thinking about things in space, thinking about different types of people, different energies. Like Tom Waits always said, his band could do anything. They could rob a bank, they could play jazz, they could play blues, and I think when you're putting together a group like this, by the end of the time you have to know, okay, if we were robbing a bank, who would drive the getaway car, who would hack into the bank's computer systems, and we've got that figured out now. Dinosaurs are so difficult. Like, they're horrible, huge, scary creatures that, are terrifying, and we make horror films like Jurassic Park about them. And for me, they're like a central metaphor for two things. One is how difficult it is to actually be in the present moment. It's as hard as loving a dinosaur, or as hard as not being afraid of this sort of giant Godzilla creature, but also how difficult it is to really understand deep time, to really get our heads around the fact that we really have been on the earth for such a brief period. Like the first dinosaurs appeared, the interval in time between the Stegosaurus and the T-Rex is almost the same as the interval in time between the T-Rex and us. That's how long they were around, and we just stepped in 200,000 years ago. So what I have to say, working on the piece, my brain has changed. Thinking about these things, my brain has changed, and it, we face this massive crisis right now, politically, globally, and in terms of climate change, and you realize, like, we're just here for this tiny brief time, and have we just like moved in like students moving into a party and destroying it on the first weekend that they're in an apartment? There's been a building complex that's been here forever, and we just destroy it on the opening weekend. So that really puts that in perspective. Well, what I thought was interesting was, first of all, I don't want to show the things that we have to look at every day on our phone, because we're going to have to leave the theatre and already be looking at those things again. But what I thought was interesting was I found these early Gilbreth films, and Gilbreth was, in some ways, he was very pro-workers. He was sort of basically started the field of ergonomics and was studying how do workers do motions in the factory. You know, when they fill the soap boxes, how do they film them? And he wanted to help workers do it so that they wouldn't hurt themselves. And he realized, okay, well, if you do these smooth curved motions, it's much better for your body. And I found all these early videos that he made over 100, early films that he made over 100 years ago. And he built this special clock so that he could run the film slow, you know, to sort of run the film like at different speeds and then still know he had a scale that he could know how fast or how slow the workers were doing this. And he would put grids behind them to measure their movements and things like this. And I thought, yeah, we think it's a modern invention. It was, you know, the Industrial Revolution gave birth to the concept of time as something which controls us. You know, it was happening a long time ago, where we may feel we live in a unique historical moment, but we're sort of reliving the same versions of problems people have had for over a century, and we still haven't quite figured out how to deal with them.